Hello everyone and welcome to Scale Modeling Tutorials. This is episode 5, Basic Weathering, and today we're going to have a look at salt chipping. Salt chipping is a method to use to simulate rust or wear on a model, but to demonstrate the technique properly, the model would have been too small, and I really want to show what the technique can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prep up a sheet of A4 plastic and basically turn this into this. All the techniques that we use will be exactly the same as the techniques you'd use on a model, including the surface preparation, the base layer preparation, and how we get the salt to adhere to the model, how we chip it off, and then what we do afterwards to bring out the effect. So I'm going to zip through and fast forward a lot of the actual prep, as you don't need to really see that. But it'd be interesting to see the piece go from basically bare plastic into the rusty effect. So to prep the surface, I'm going to use Tamiya's Fine Surface Primer in white. This is a recent buy of mine. I thought I'd treat myself and see what it's like. I've put a link in the description below if you want to try it out yourself. I can't fault the stuff. The spray pattern's really good. It's really fine. So for this project, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave 10 minutes in between each coat just to let it dry off, and I'll put 3 coats over. So now I'm going to apply the rust base layer, and this is the layer that we're going to attach the salt chips to. This is the effect, so I'm going to put it all down each of the panel lines that I've made. Make sure I put a couple of coats on there to give it a good rich deep rusty colour. This is where, when the salt is stuck to it, we're going to put the overcoat over it. If you were airbrushing with salt, what you do is you just apply water and sprinkle the salt on, and the airbrush would then layer the paint over the salt. But with hand brushing, you're obviously going to be pushing the salt around with the brush. So this technique allows you to seal the salt into the paint so it doesn't move about. So the salt I'm going to use is just some Saxa standard from the supermarket, coarse sea salt. You can use any. And I'm going to put on far too much, or what seems like far too much. It's just so it all sticks onto that base layer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to water down our rust wash and go in over the top across the salt to get a lot of the crystals coated and sticking down, so that they don't move about when it comes to putting the surface layer over the top of them. Once I've got a good amount of salt down and got it all stuck down, I'm going to change the pigment colour slightly, add some more paint over the top, and then I'm going to move the salt around into a sort of general area of where I want it, and making sure that once I've got all the salt nice and wet and covered, I'm going to uncover the actual panel lines that I've cut or scribed into the board, so it moves it away from the edge of the effect, because what I want is sort of a clear line of where the rust runs, and when it comes to chipping it off, we've got a very defined edge for the rust. Once I've got the pattern how I like it, I'm just going to discard all the all the salt that's been pushed away. Give it a few taps and make sure it's all sticking down. And now I'm going to apply sort of a blue base coat. Looking at the salt, as you can see here in the time lapse, it dries off. Once it's got that lovely frosted film to it, that's when you can start painting over the top of it, so that the blue base coat doesn't creep into the effect. Now, while I'm waiting for the first few coats on the panels to dry off, I'm going to apply the first of a few very light black washes into the edges of the effect itself. This will pick out the lines and pick out any of the rivets that are exposed, and start to make the salt wash away a little bit. It'll also help it creep along, as you can see in the time lapse. As I apply the paint and then the water, it does creep quite well and stick into those panel lines, and it starts to make it look a lot more like rust. Here I'm just going to apply a very thin coating layer of Vallejo matte varnish, because I'm going to put some violet over the top of the blue to give the colour some depth, and it's starting now to look quite warm. So into the salt chip in itself, now just selecting randomly across the effect. As you can see, as I pick at the salt with the back of the scalpel, you also get these lovely little flakes of paint. Some of those you can leave on, and it leaves that wonderful bubbled effect that you get underneath paint when moisture gets underneath it. And picking out the salt is really quite easy. As you peel it back, some of them will have some seep underneath where the blue has got underneath it, but most of them will have a very clear defined line where you can see the rust base layer that we embedded the salt into. Try not to pick them all off, because leaving at least half of them there will leave that bubbled effect that we're after. Regularly brush off all the excess salt with a very slightly damp brush. As you go along, you can see the effects start to pop out, and keep brushing, keep moving away all the debris, so you can get a really good picture of how the effects coming along. Once you're happy with the level or the amount of chipping that you've got and the amount of bubbling, what you'll need to do then is you'll need to find all those bits that you've uncovered, because they look really nice and fresh. Give it a good sweep off with a slightly damp brush. Mix up some more rust pigment, and then using a combination of the rust pigment and some water, start dabbing it into all the little chipping holes that you've made, thinning down constantly with water to make the effect more pronounced. And as it dries off, it will go quite matte. But over the top of that, we're going to apply another wash or two. And you'll see as the effect dries off, and as we add more water, it thins the effect out and gives it more realism. Another very light black wash over the top of the effect will make it start to be more defined and give it sort of a 3D, give it more depth. Once I'm happy with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet all of the panels and apply a very, very thin rust wash around the edge of the effect, and then streak it off into the panels themselves to give the effect that the rust has crept or ran. When those lines dry off, it really does look, when you're close up to it, like it is real rust. The water just helps the wash soak away. As you can see there, it's creeping down onto the panels and creeping up onto the panels. Once you're happy with the effect, go over it with some matte varnish and let that dry off. It's very easy to go too far, so make sure you make your mind up when your effect is done, and then varnish over the top of it. As you can see, it comes out looking really good. It could be the side of a rusty tanker, and these techniques will work on your models really well. Thank you so much for watching this episode 5. My other videos have been doing really well thanks to you guys. Please do have a look at the Facebook group or the Reddit group, and if you've got time or if you're so inclined, please do subscribe to my channel. It really does help. The more likes and comments I get on the videos, the better I do on YouTube. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.